Welcome to Focus on Business, a podcast show for photographers with me, your host, Jane Goodrich. I'm talking to successful photographers so you can learn from our experiences and have the business of your dreams. So join us and let's focus on business. Hi, so today on the podcast and YouTube show, we have the fantastic Libby Dollar. Welcome. She's an amazing, amazing wedding photographer and also probably one of my favorite photography educators on client communication. She's been on our mastermind. We've had some really good topics. And welcome, Libby. It's just an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jane. You are one of the people I look up to so much in this industry, and I always love talking to you. So.
Well, thanks.
Thanks for having me on.
Tell our audience a little bit more about Libby Dollar and what you got into photography for and where you are. Just a little bit more.
Yeah. So Libby Dollar is my real birth name. Dollar is Scottish, apparently, but it's kind of fun. I've been a wedding photographer since 2009. I got into it kind of by accident. I was a music major my first couple of years of college, and then I studied sociology. So what I really love is people and art. And portrait photography and wedding photography for me is the intersection of those two wonderful things. And it's been a blast these last 15 years. I've shot weddings all over the country. I'm at 27 states now, and I'm looking to shoot weddings in all 50. So if you know anybody in Montana or West Virginia, let me know. And then also I have figured out in the last few years that I really have a knack for solving tough client situations. I am the person in my life that most of my friends and family will come to for, can you help me write this difficult email? And about 4 years ago, I started parlaying that into writing material and offering advice to photographers and other creative small business owners about how to both communicate with their clients in a way that makes the clients behave well and also makes things go smoothly for you, but also doesn't betray your own values. Sometimes it's so hard as a small business owner to not give away everything because we've been taught, oh, the customer's always right. Or if someone gets upset with you, we're afraid they're going to wreck our whole business. But we as business owners deserve to have boundaries, set our prices how we want, have our policies how we want. And so my communication tricks that I teach center around keeping your soul intact and making sure your business stays profitable, but also making sure clients understand things when they need to understand them so that the clients behave properly and don't make our lives miserable. So that's my specialty. And taking beautiful photos.
I love that. I've been lucky enough to be in a couple of classes that Libby has taught. And even just from like your website, how you're communicating to the right client is important too. So it's not just emails or on the shoot. It's everything.
It's top to bottom. It's who you are, because I don't believe in taking somebody else's email templates and being like, thank you, sir or madam. It's weird. I need people to know who I am and sound like who I sound like. And I believe all of us can do this.
Part of Pixello, we had some emails and like some of them you amazingly helped write, but then some of them, because I was looking at mine, I'm like, I have sarcastic English humor in my emails. Nobody's going to want to it doesn't fit for everybody. People are like, oh yeah, well, how'd you get your car? I'm like, because that's me. I'm sarcastic and I'm British, and that tone comes across in my emails. So
I love it.
You have to sort of be true to who you are. So you've been photographing since 2009. You beat me by a year. But if you were to travel back in time, I know everyone says that everything's a journey and you learn along the way. But if you were to go back to 2009 and say, hey, Libby, do this for your business and you'll be really so much better off. Or you could have started it perfectly, because we all do, right?
So actually, when I started, I didn't know that much about photography because I hadn't really studied it, but I figured out that I had an aptitude for it and a bunch of things just fell into place. And so actually in 2009, I felt pretty good about everything I did then. I started working at somebody else's photography studio and learned a bunch of things. And then by the next year, I'd booked a bunch of my own weddings. The thing that I would go back in time and change is probably the couple years after that. I lost my self-confidence because at first I was like, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to try this thing. And then I thought, oh no, I've got to be perfect. So if I could go back in time and talk to my younger self or talk to a new photographer right now, the best advice I've ever gotten and followed is this idea from the Ira Glass, who's the guy who does This American Life, has this famous quote called The Gap. And basically what he says is, you are an artist, whatever field you got into because you have really, really good taste and you know how it should be done. And that's absolutely why I got into photography. I could look at a picture and go, oh, no, that looks like a driver's license photo, you know? And I knew how I wanted the colors to be. Like, I had good taste. I knew what I wanted. But what he says is there's a gap between what you know is good and what you're able to do. And the only way to close the gap is to just do a ton of work. And what I wish I had done, and I have done a ton of work, but I wish I judged myself less along the way, because photography is one of these industries where there's nobody saying you can or can't do this. And if somebody's out there trying to give you advice or criticism, don't take criticism from somebody that you wouldn't take advice from, you know?
Right.
There is nobody who can tell you that you can't do this. There's nobody who can tell you that your style is wrong or that the way you're doing things is wrong. I wish younger, early 20s me who was starting my business would have known the haters don't matter. It's irrelevant. Just put your goggles on, do what you love. That's how you're going to find your style. That's how you're going to find your people.
I love that. Yeah. I love that because I've been doing it for 14 years, and along the way, I sort of went down a bit of a rabbit hole. Maybe it was a little bit with Instagram or Facebook groups or something. I started doubting myself.
Yep.
You know, my style was one way. It was very clean. I have a specific style. And then I think I was following too many other trends. Yeah. And I'm not a trend. Like, I'm just like, I like shooting bold colors. I like shooting babies, if you're listening on the podcast, but babies are actually, you know, you might show a little bit of nostril, but it's in the newborn industry, do not show a nostril. And it's like, I actually like seeing a tiny bit of nostril. I don't like the huge cranium. It's my taste, right? If you have to literally pull the head down, all you see is the forehead. So I actually was at a conference where a very famous photographer was there, and she does babies as well. And people were like, because, you know, there's a big gasp of, you know, oh, wow, she shot up the nose, or like you can see nostrils on her pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, like she is Anne Geddes, and you're like criticizing her work. Come on, right?
Isn't that also just the weirdest experience when you've been not letting yourself do something? You're like, oh, yeah, this is not in. This is a wrong way to photograph something. I didn't even know about the nostril thing. I photograph babies. Yeah, right. I had no idea. But the ways in which I've gone, okay, I have to do my details pictures at a wedding this certain way, and the candles have to be lit, and it's got to be soft focus, and my flat lays. Oh God, I hate flat lays, but that's a whole other thing. But I've been stopping myself from doing what I wanted to do, and then I see somebody out there who's really successful who just breaks the rule that I have been like painfully not breaking, and I just feel so resentful. And it's like, now that I'm 15 years in, I think that's the freedom I have. I've watched the trends come and go at this point, you know, and everything goes in and out. The best way to be your own photographer is follow what you like.
Right.
What I like is the most important thing to listen to. So
I agree with that. And I actually think that we can get really sidetracked from what our actual natural art is. Mm-hmm. If you like black and white and crisp, it's okay. It doesn't have to be film looking like, or you like sharp photos. It doesn't have to be blurry. You don't have to follow the trend, because I can guarantee you there's enough people that like your work. And at the end of the day, you know, if people are coming back to you, it doesn't matter what other people say, especially other photographers. If you look at the amount of different styles there are in the art world, that's the same with photography. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can be a Jackson Pollock, basically, you know, like my 2-year-old does, and still be famous, right? Yeah. Come on.
Exactly.
I don't have a 2-year-old, but when she was 2, I used to think she could be Jackson Pollock, right? But there's a story behind it. So you just have to be you, right?
Yes.
That's what I think.
And that's hard to do, but putting the blinders on and saying what I like matters, and looking for your inspiration outside of photography is another cool thing to do. You know, I like these colors. I love bright colors. So anyway.
I love looking for inspiration outside of photography, because you can find it anywhere. You can find it in furniture. You can find it anywhere. You know, even movies and
interior
how they film something. Yeah.
Film conversations with people. This revelation really helped me a while back. I shoot like 25 weddings a year. There are 2-something million weddings happening in this country. I only need to find 25 people that like me that much.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. You know, like,
I'm not a giant corporation. I'm not trying to get everybody. So
yeah. And I think that sort of gets into an abundance mindset. I do that a lot with photographers and coaching. Realistically, for family photography, you really need about 60 clients. If it's 90, newborns is 60. But like, look at the birth rate, look at the schools, look how many families are in your neighborhood. If there's not many families, you might need a different genre, right? You're a destination wedding photographer. If you had to move your business, is kind of a different. I mean,
well,
you have had to move.
I have moved my business twice, and I'm looking at doing it a third time. That's one of the reasons I focused on destination. If I had to move my business to another state again, which I've thought about, with weddings, it's a lot easier because weddings book a long way away. And so if I'm thinking, okay, I might be living somewhere else in a year and a half, when those weddings start to come up, I just make sure that I think through how much would it cost me to get back here to shoot that wedding or to get to wherever that wedding is, and make sure that's incorporated into the price that I'm quoting people for that far out. That's kind of the biggest deal. And then, you know, even being a destination wedding photographer, it's better for me if not every single wedding requires getting on an airplane, because 25 times a year, maybe it sounds glamorous, but that's too much.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Just having a regular life. Because every destination wedding also now, if it's a local wedding, it's 8 hours plus drive time. But if it's a destination wedding, it's 8 hours plus a day before, a day after, a rental car, a hotel, the flight,
that's
all
of
that stuff. And it ends up adding up, not just money, but also time. On an airplane.
Time is money.
I can't edit, you know. Basically, I look at the destination I'm looking to go to and I start advertising there. And one of the things that not a lot of people love this, but one of my best advertising avenues is bridal shows. And so if I go somewhere in person, even if I don't live there yet, they're talking to me in person in that place. So they're like, oh, well, she's here. And people do hire me off the internet for far-flung destinations. That happens. And it has to do with being my authentic self and people going, well, I have to have her. Advertising the new location, and then just plan on have some savings. I know that's not easy in this industry, but if you have to move, it's just going to be expensive for a little bit. Plan on going back to the original location, and also be honest with your clients. So if you have a lot of repeat clients in your existing location. So I moved to Houston from Denver 5 years ago. I still have a bunch of repeat family clients in Denver. And I just was honest with all of them. I'm moving to Houston. I'm back here all the time. Do you want me to let you know when I'm back here? I don't have a studio. Everything's on location. So that didn't change for them. And I'm going back to Denver in May. I have an email list divided by, here's all of my people who have booked me for family photos in Denver before. I'm going to email them and say, hey, I've got this date in the evening, this date in the morning, this date in the evening. Are you interested in any of this? And then if you're not, the next time I'm there is September. I have a friend who has lived in Denver for like 10 years, and she does that every year in Florida and Washington, D.C. and Michigan, like all these places that she used to live. And she'll go take a trip. And because it's scarcity, they know they like working with her. And she's like, I got these 4 days. People book.
You'll book it. People book. Yeah. When I moved from Chicago, I was doing it part-time in Chicago, but I would go back a couple times a year and, you know, they'll book you. I do think it's interesting a plan for savings, because it is going to take a little bit more time to build up your business there, which requires investment. It requires, you know, maybe being on Google Ads, the bridal show.
Plan on some more marketing. Also, I did it in 2019, which is, I didn't realize what a horrible time to move that was going to be, because I got to Houston in mid 2019. All of my weddings that year were still in Denver because I didn't have a lot of notice. In Denver and other destinations. I was in Miami and weird stuff that year too. So every single wedding that I had booked as a local wedding in Denver, I had to now spend $600 conservatively, because I could stay with friends in Denver, to fly back there, rent a car. Renting a car in Denver is the most horrible experience too. And then go shoot this stuff that I already had on the calendar. So that was all of 2019. And that was very expensive. But no worries. 2020 is going to be a big year. I'll do a little Denver. I'll do a little Houston. Nope. That whole year was also, everything was
everything would have been, if you'd have been in Denver, it would have been,
it would have been bad also, but I wouldn't have been coming into it like in debt from 2019, having done all that flying. So
yeah,
it's going to be expensive.
It's going to be expensive. Yeah. I decided that I would expand my studio and renovate and spend about $20,000 on the studio at the end of 2019. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Oh, and then newborn photos. Yeah, having to refund that was fun.
Oh.
Yeah. And people are like, don't you have savings? I'm like, yeah, now I don't. I don't have any business savings. I did. But I decided to renovate a studio, and then I just had to refund all of those newborn shoots that weren't happening. What is your favorite form of marketing? I know you said bridal shows. Is that your favorite form of marketing? Or
is it my favorite? Not really.
Well, what works best for you?
Like, that tends to get me maybe half of my bookings in a year. I do a couple of the ones like at a convention center where it's just everybody in a city. And honestly, they're super exhausting. And I cannot tell you how many times clients will say, I went to that thing and you're the only good thing about it. That's happened a lot of times. I try to just act like a person because most of the people there are like, congratulations on your engagement. Because it's just, it's horrible.
Like loving bridal
and hard.
shows.
Fortunately, I'm extroverted. My husband and I both used to be bartenders. So the idea of a bunch of people like walking up to your table and talking, making small talk all day is pretty natural for us. Basically, I do bridal shows because I do well at them. I know it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, when I meet somebody in person, what I think is happening is they look at me and talk to me and go, oh, she could take my picture. This wouldn't be weird. That would be fun. And that's also my second best marketing, which is videos of my face on social media. Back in the good old days when Facebook was new, all I had to do was post pictures and people would be like, oh, can you take my picture? But now it has to be me talking about something and showing my personality in some way. And it's Instagram Reels with me talking about some photography topic and flashing a couple of pictures up. If the reel does well, that absolutely gets me inquiries too. So those two things are my best. I'm interested in doing more with ads. I've definitely booked a few from ads, but I hate spending money. So it's hard sometimes to do that. And then you don't know which one is going to be well received or I don't know.
Are you talking Facebook ads or Instagram ads or Google?
Well, Facebook and Meta ads are like the same thing now, kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've done all of those. And I think the thing I'm looking at more now is Instagram ads, but I haven't done those in a long time, so I couldn't comment. So just natural traffic on Instagram with reels with my face, because the ones with just a slideshow of pictures are, I'm not saying my pictures look like everybody else's, but they're not so over the top different because I have kind of a more classic, timeless sort of style. So that doesn't always grab people, but my personality does. So
yeah, I can see that. So with weddings, I mean, you're in Houston. Is there a seasonality to it?
There is. So July and August are horrible here. Most weddings are indoors, which is weird for me because in Colorado, like 2 weddings were indoors ever. Like it was all outside. But so Houston, yeah, summer's not really wedding season. And the busiest months are November, January, April is crazy this year. October's busy everywhere. So it's kind of like that fall with like a little break for Christmas. Although this year coming up, I have a bunch of Christmas weddings. So when it's somewhat nice outside here in Houston. And
interesting.
Then it's fun for me because when I go back to Denver season is September was always my busiest, followed immediately by July. And both of those are not a thing in Houston. I can go back. That's a good like having 2 markets thing. I can go back there when it's not busy here and vice versa.
That's interesting to sort of see the differences between, I mean, obviously it's probably weather related, right? You know, it's like, it's like boiling. Related. I'm not going to sweat in my dress in July in Houston, but it's probably gorgeous in Denver in July.
In the mountains it is. Denver can be like 90s, but you go west a couple hours and everything's just beautiful and the highs are in the 70s and the air is crisp. You know, you see the stars at night and every day is sunny. So that's really easy. When you don't want to be having a wedding in Denver is springtime because you could get the kind of snowstorm. I think Denver a couple of weeks ago got 18 inches of heavy, wet snow. Right now is off season for Denver.
Okay.
But I'm about to, April weddings here there's a lot.
There's a lot. So you're about to be busy. So apart from having now these 2 destinations, how do you balance the seasonality of it or the sporadicness of it? Years can be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened in August of one year because May is crazy and then June is nobody and then July I've got loads. And so how do you deal with that?
Honestly, it's really hard. One of the small things I've started doing is I used to have my clients, when they booked a wedding, whatever their total package price was, 50% was due to book and the other 50% was due right around the wedding day, like a week before. And that worked fine for a lot of years. But then 2 years ago, I had a client ask if they could divide it up into 3 parts instead. And yeah, I don't see why not. And the unexpected benefit of that is the payment that comes halfway in between, typically on off season. And so I've now started offering that to everyone and also allowing people to divide it into quarters. And I charge enough that a quarter is an okay deposit amount, especially when the second quarter is coming pretty quick. And that has evened out my income a lot. So I can look at my year and go, okay, I may not necessarily be shooting a bunch of weddings in July and August, but I know I've got these payments coming in those months. Maybe the workload fluctuates, but my income doesn't as much. So during those months when it's less work, then I can work on marketing. I can work on my website, my portfolio. I can work on my other projects like my education, or I can take a vacation. So
what's that?
we got to take vacations.
I know.
I booked a wedding in Europe. So in 3 weeks, I'm headed to Prague. I'm really excited about it.
You need a second shooter?
No, it's my husband's my second shooter. And we got married last September, right before I had weddings, like 12 weekends in a row.
Right.
And yes, I'm shooting weddings when I'm working, but then we were taking an extra like whole week and it's basically our honeymoon. So with destination weddings, I always have a couple padding days. So I feel like I've taken a lot of vacations, but I can't tell you the last time I looked at the map and said, ooh, you know where I want to go?
Prague.
I'm excited. So I do I want to go everywhere. So that's not that hard.
Prague would be amazing. Italy. Next time you have a shoot in Italy, I'll come along. Okay. I'll hold your bag. But what are any red flags that you get spidey sense from? If you get an inquiry, what sends you cringing and I'm not going to respond to that for 3 days type emails?
The people that don't want to give me any information at all really kind of make my skin crawl. If you fill out my contact form, which isn't long, it's not asking you for your zodiac sign. It's not, it's...
You didn't ask for the social security number, you know?
No, but it is asking your date and your location, like what city is your wedding in. If you don't want to even give me that information, I can't send you a price list because based on where you're going to be, that affects my costs and therefore it affects what I can afford to charge. So when I get like a DM or something in Instagram that's like, what are your prices? I mean, I'll respond to them. I don't want to make those people feel bad, but that's not the place to start. I need more information from you. There's red flags in terms of when people are mean or they make a lot of assumptions or just the same kind of red flags of like, if you were just making a friend and they were just being real strange, those are the same red flags for me for business. Because of all of the research I've done and what I've learned about conflict resolution, I don't actually think there's that many behaviors that are like, this person is completely impossible. Most of the time when somebody is asking a dumb question or saying something weird or having like that dodgy behavior, there's a reason for it. They had a bad experience with another vendor and they're trying to prevent that. Or somebody else had a bad experience with a photographer. And so they're trying to like keep it between these certain parameters. I don't like leave myself open. I'm not going to go follow their process and beg them to like me because they had this bad experience. But I try to draw them out, like what's behind this. Hey, here's the answer to your question. And also, I found some people also want this piece of information. And I make a lot of friends that way. I'm the person who a lot of times clients are like, we've been looking and nobody has answered this question or nobody has made us feel as good as you do. I really think 90% of the time, shitty behavior from clients is because of something else. It's not about us. The thing the thing that's making them weird is not in the room right now. It's okay to not trust me, a stranger on the internet, with your money in the first interaction. Trust is built, and it goes both ways. And if they're unwilling to participate in that process, they're not going to get far enough to book me. I don't have a process where people can just book without talking to me. No, we have to have a conversation first. Right. And if you're not going to be a person, if you're not up for the way I do things, both in terms of how I take the pictures, but also of how I organize my information ahead of time, the questions I need from you, that kind of stuff, then then we're just not a good fit. And we figure that out before money is exchanged 90% of the time.
I like the fact that where you said is trust is built over time, because it goes both ways. A lot of photographers say, oh, it's when they try and negotiate or anything like that. It could be in their culture to always ask for a deal. Is that the best price? So don't assume that that is an offense on you.
No, I work with a ton of people who have told me I'm too expensive. That happens all the time. And what I tend to say is, well, for what you're asking for, this is the lowest amount I can afford to charge you. We're both people here and it's totally fine. But I don't say, well, if you can't fit into my structure, get out of here. A lot of times I'll say, okay, you're objecting to prices. That's not insane. This is the first time you've ever shopped for wedding photography in all likelihood. Right. So why don't you tell me what is your budget and what are your priorities? Yeah. And if they then say, well, I'd like an engagement session, but that's not a priority, and I'd like this and that, then I'll say, okay, well, here's what you can get for what you want to spend.
Right.
A lot of people, I can say that. And then sometimes they'll go, well, I just want to add the engagement session back on. And then they, they understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that doesn't have to be a conversation ender. It's a starter.
No.
Because I'm confident enough that I'm not going to give away the farm.
I really liked what you said about it could actually have been a prior experience that they have. I'm a newborn photographer. What do they come from? Wedding photographers. Like they 4 or 5 years into it haven't got an album, right? From their wedding photographer, but we won't talk about that. But it's also, but on that shoot, I can be like, so did you get back to your photographer with their select? A lot of it is on them, but they don't realize. I was like, I don't do that because it's waiting on the clients. Oh, do you think they're waiting on me? Likely they are. But anyway, their hesitation towards a photographer or hiring someone is from a prior experience, not about me. So I'm going to do my best to sort of avoid that type of personality in the future.
Yeah, you got to build in a little bit of that because there's no such thing as mind reading. And there's no way to know 100% how a client is going to behave throughout the interaction. Once the money's exchanged, they may start acting terribly. And so we still have to act with integrity and respect our own boundaries and our own process and guide them through the parts of it they don't understand.
For you, like book a wedding, like how much stress is that? Of course, someone might be a psychopath on the day. For newborns, like I have to go into every session thinking that person might have had a traumatic birth. Their hormones are crazy. This is not a normal situation for them. Like
becoming a parent is the single most stressful thing I've ever gone through, for sure. So, yeah.
I end up becoming like Mary Poppins, and it's fine. Everything I can smooth that
because I have the same kind of patience for people with weddings, where it's every single person is at this party, and you're supposed to be the center of attention, and you want them to think certain things about how awesome you are and how awesome your partner is, and everybody else has feelings about it. If I can just be a space for somebody to say some of that stuff sometimes, then they get it out of their head and then they're back in the moment for photos. I also want to say this. We're talking about people who maybe have been burned by prior photographers' experience. I don't believe that there are a bunch of people out there being bad photographers and being shitty to people and taking their money. I'm sure that happens. I think I've read a couple of, scammer stories on the news, that kind of thing. But I think most of the time what happens is photographers don't charge enough because they want that booking, and then they get themselves overscheduled and they have too much to do and it's super overwhelming. And then client emails come in and they feel like these little arrows hitting you. And you ghost or you shut down or you just don't edit things for 9 months. And I think that's a lot of times what's happening with these photographers that people got burned by. It's because the photographer is overextended. And so if you're a photographer listening to this and you feel yourself kind of headed to that direction, please let us help you. There are so many tools. There are so many ways you can automate things, and nothing happens overnight. But if you start to climb back up that hill so you can actually handle the capacity that you need to handle, this is the best freaking career. But if you get overwhelmed, it is really hard.
I think we all have those hard emails. I mean, I have ADHD. I don't care. I'll tell everybody I'm ADHD and proud. I use it to my hyperfocus. But I had a coach and she was well, why can't you respond to that person or something? And I was just blocked because I was just don't like think about it. So these emails that weren't difficult if I just took the time, but they're just annoying enough that they just sat at the bottom of my inbox.
Yep.
Now it's been 3 days. Now it's been 5 days.
And now it feels radioactive.
Now it's like,
you're like, and there's like anxiety,
4 of them.
Like when you
and
look
she's
at
like,
it.
can you just get to a point where these hard emails, or you go to Libby's client communicator tool.
So I was going to say, I built this thing for myself because I was this person for a long time who would like look at the email and be like, and then put it off for another day. And then the next day it's worse. So I have a product. It's really short and concise. So you can use it in an hour. It's called the Client Conflict Response Builder. And it takes you through a quiz for you of, am I right or am I wrong here? Is this in my contract or is this not? What am I up for giving this person? Or do I want them to go away and never talk to me again? So it kind of gets you out of your fight or flight response. And then it walks you through, based on your responses, you have 5 points. You're going to put them in this order. And this is how you answer their question, let them know what's going to happen, and let them know what's going to follow up. So you don't have to be the one thinking of the email from scratch. And it's not template. So it's not, dear sir or madam, the cold somebody else's voice trying to respond to somebody. So your client doesn't feel like they're being handled. They feel like they're getting the information they need. But I'm providing you a structure that you can quickly and easily write the email without having to come up with it all yourself. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, that's on my website.
Yeah.
And we'll link that or whatever. But libbydollar.com/edu is where you can find that. That's
amazing. And then also you were telling me earlier that you do the one-off client consults with a Zoom call. Sometimes it's so hard to explain and it's just help.
This comes from me spending several years in the place of why can't I write these emails? And I figured out how. And it requires a little bit of bravery, but if you at least know the direction you need to head in and what the limits of the possible damage are, you can hit send. And then I'll tell you what has happened to me. The client that originally inspired this, who was just my one and only bridezilla, and I'm not even going to mention what year because I don't want her to know that, because she does not think that I had a hard time with her. She's a big fan of mine. And she is asked to do other shoots at other times. And it's because it took a long time to figure it out, but how to respond to her where we're talking about her needs and not about my fears and insecurities.
Yeah.
So
it sort of ends up sort of being like a therapy session a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yes. So I do offer that one-on-one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a therapist, but I've been where you are and I will help.
So you've been shooting for 15 years. Do you have any funny shoots or something happened on a shoot? You're not going to believe this happened on my shoot. I mean, I'm sure you have probably a few.
My very first wedding that I was the lead photographer on and that I was paid for, I went to the rehearsal because I'm like, okay, I want to see where they're going to stand. And I don't really go to rehearsals anymore because I will figure it out in the moment. But at this time I was like, I want to be so prepared. So I go to this rehearsal and we're at this big house in Southern Colorado where I lived at the time. And it's got like 50 acres and this stream in the back. And the groom is there with all of his groomsmen and the bride is somewhere else in the house with all of her bridesmaids. And the groom is standing on the back porch and we're just talking, waiting for this stuff to get started because also these people didn't have a planner. And so it wasn't like a formal time. So I ended up spending like 3 hours and kind of them asking me where to stand for this wedding. And anyway, because if there's no planner,
it's the planner
ends up being the planner. That's what happens. At least as far as the couple is concerned. I have nothing to do with catering. But anyway, as we're standing there, a man, it turns out one of the groomsmen, runs out of the house totally naked and starts hauling ass down this big hill towards the creek. Everybody's, oh God, Libby, I'm so sorry. You weren't supposed to be here. We've been drinking all day. And then somebody goes, he's Brazilian. And I'm like, well, this is insane. But I also just bought this 70 to 200 lens. So I just throw it on my camera and I'm like, I'm going to get a picture of this guy's ass because this is part of the story. And they were like, no. The bride can never know that the Brazilian asshole friend was streaking. So that was my first one. And I was like, is this what this career is going to be like? And it is. It really is. Weddings are so fun because people will pull out all the stops. I remember one time being told, hey, There's a surprise mariachi band in 20 minutes. I've had...
What? Did the bride know?
Yeah. It was the groom's family and honest, that was super fun. Oh, one time I was at a photo shoot, and I might expect this in Texas, but this was in Colorado. It was an engagement shoot, and the couple, it's like a normal engagement shoot. They're a little bit country. They're both wearing boots. You know, I don't really tell people how to style themselves. I want to capture who they actually are. And then the groom, who had been real quiet the whole time, almost like he was a hostage, like he didn't want to be in this photo shoot, was like, hey, can I get a picture of this? And he shows me a fucking gun in his jeans waistband. And I was like,
What?
Why? How? Fortunately, we were in a public park with a lot of people around.
Fortunately.
Like, I wasn't, I'm going to get shot. But I got the sense that this was my personality, like jeans and trucks and guns and, you know, whatever. It was a real country style wedding, but that kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, that would have freaked me.
Well, what? Leave that in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please don't pull that out at me. I don't want to die. It reminded me of one time. I have a fear of horses, and I do a shoot for this family, and they're like, oh, we just want portraits of the girls or whatever. And I drive up to their gorgeous house up this hill, and they're like 3 and 5, these girls. We were doing a portrait shoot of them. And they're like, yeah, we just hired these horses. Have they got on a horse before? I don't have a zoom lens. It like totally surprised me, honestly. What am I doing here? I am kind of afraid, but luckily they had a handler, and the woman that was there, she was great. But the little kids are frightened because they've never been on a horse before. But yeah, we get some funny ones, man.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that makes more sense why so many people will inquire, would you be up for having our dogs at the photo shoot? And I'm like, yeah, your family pet is part of your family. Like, I'm all about that. Or, you know, even with engagement photos, like, you have a pet, like, yes, heck yes. But a lot of people ask like in this real tentative way. And I guess there's probably a bunch of people out there who are actually afraid of dogs. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not, but I'm.
There was an incident when I was a teenager where a horse did try and jump over a fence and did. And I was like, you know, we were walking in the fields. I'm from England, so we have a lot of fields. But yeah, like I don't know them. Like I'm not been around horses, so I don't know what they do. And I'm sure they're fine. But like, don't just show up with them.
They're enormous. Yeah,
they're
like
huge.
Maybe if somebody's like holding on to them or something, like the trainer, like it's, yeah.
But anyway, all right. So that's our funny shoot stories.
Yeah, I do too. I will be thinking of them this afternoon after.
Of course. You'll
be like, I should have told Jane about the whatever, you know?
Yeah. So what would be the one tip that you would give to someone that was like, hey, I want to be a photographer, Libby. Tell me how to do it.
I kind of said this earlier. If you love it, and by love it, I mean, like, if you take a picture and you have strong feelings about it, this is how it should be. This is how I want the photo to look. Then ignore everybody else. Unless you go seek somebody out for constructive criticism, just ignore them. There are so many cool photographers out there who are doing stuff right now that countless people would have told them, this is a mistake and you're wrong. Yeah. Like even 5 years ago. The kind of film aesthetic is coming back in, I think, because we're at the point with digital cameras where they aren't going to get that much noticeably better every year. So now we're kind of like reverting to this old kind of nostalgic style. Plus, it's been about 20 years since pros really used film. I
think we went through a nostalgia time in COVID too. So I think like that's one of the reasons why I think people are like, oh, like looking at their film photos. And I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Every style is okay. Anything, any way in which you choose to point a camera at people and take their picture is okay. And so as long as you are posting your work and not just going to a bunch of styled shoots that you're paying for and posting pictures you could never hope to recreate in real life, then whatever clients find you are going to be stoked on what you can offer. Don't lie to them. Don't lie to yourselves. Take a crap load of pictures, put them out there into the world, and put your blinders on. Ignore the haters, because there is somebody who will hate what you're doing no matter what it is. So don't try to... Yeah.
Agreed. Don't try and be somebody that you're not. I mean, there's a really well-respected interior designer that is hired by all of the wealthy people in this area. And she had a client. Yeah, you can do black and white with spots of color. That would look great here. Oh my gosh, that was like so 2000. That was,
but with the streaker, I did selective color for. The That's
like, yeah. So what I'm saying is she's getting a lot of work, right? And her style is her style. And so if you love selective color, go for it. Just because it's not trendy now. When I first started, even my mum, well, you're cropping off somebody's head because it was a close-up and they were looking at the baby. It could be dating and generational.
The photographer I started working for when I was brand new, I taught him how to use his computer. He taught me how to run a studio. And he said to me about weddings, don't deliver pictures where people aren't looking at the camera. They don't want that. So when people are walking down the aisle, have them stop, have them look at you and smile, and then have them keep going. Your clients only want pictures where they're looking at the camera. Sir, that is not what I want at all. I don't think that's it. That's a certain kind of picture that I think is expected for a certain number of frames. But no, candids are not like that. I hate that.
Yeah.
When I say follow what you like and do what you like and ignore the haters, also pay attention to what you personally hate. I find for me that's a real key to figuring out what I like, is if I look at something and go, it's either because I have felt some kind of shame for doing that thing myself and I don't have the freedom to do it and I actually do like it, or it's because that's a key to what I do like. Pick selective color. I don't like that. People like looking, really staring right at the camera, fake and plastic and too perfect. I don't like that. So
do you take any, let's look at the camera and smile?
Oh yeah. I call it the mom's mantelpiece shot. Yeah. But do that, and then there's so much other stuff we can do.
I have learned the hard way doing a whole shoot where no one's really looking at the camera. And the clients love it, but then the mom hates it. Mm-hmm. And so the mom's this nagging in my client's ear. So it turns to them not really liking it because their mom's nagging them. So I'm like, all right, let's do the granny shot. Mom's mantelpiece sounds better,
The best way you can do it is to get your clients to tell you as much as they possibly can about their expectations ahead of time. I have a really long questionnaire after they're booked that's like, really tell me what you don't like. Really tell me what you like. Try to imagine, sit on your couch, think about yourself holding your wedding album a year after your wedding. What's the picture that comes to mind? Tell me that stuff. So if I understand your expectations, because that's what this is. This is our photos are invisible to the clients until they see them. So if we can get as much information out of their heads about what they're hoping to see, about what their insecurities are, about just other preconceived notions that they have about photos, the better job we can do. When people get upset, it's because their expectations and reality didn't line up.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's because they don't know what they look like. Some people, if they use a lot of filters, they have no idea what they look like. And that you can't help so much. But yeah,
I actually love that idea too, because I actually tell people to go on my Instagram, go on my website, what photos do you love of newborns? But don't give me other people's, because I'm not necessarily going to recreate someone else's. But what do you like about my work? And it's actually been very freeing because some of the ones that they love are the easiest. Great. This is great. They all love it. Thanks. Yeah. You only like this one? Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that's great. I will accept when people want to show me other people's work. I think probably because of the destination thing. There's just so many possibilities, but I won't accept a copy shot. I will say, you have to tell me what you like about this. It could be the editing. It could be the posing. It could be the weather. It could be the look on her face. It could be the coloring. It could be so many things that aren't what the first thing I see. Yeah. So if you're going to show me a picture, you got to tell me what it is.
Yeah.
And 90% of the time, it just feels so good. I think it's romantic or whatever. And then I will use that word when we're at their shoot.
Yeah. I love that.
So.
All right, we're going to wrap up here. So tell our audience how they can find you. We will put it in the show notes, but if you want to repeat it, you can.
Excellent. My name is Libby Dollar. And if you Google me, I'm easy to find. Keep in mind, I am not the dollar store in Libby, Montana. That is the owner of the Instagram account that I wish I had. On Instagram, I am at Libby Dollar Photo and at Libby Dollar EDU. There's no underscore. That's just Libby Dollar Edu. Where you can find my educational content. My website is libbydollar.com. And if you go to libbydollar.com/edu, you can find all the resources that I talked about, including a place where you can ask an anonymous question to potentially be featured in my newsletter. You can join my Facebook group of photographers mostly, but all creative business owners who have client communication questions for me. You can find everything else out at my website. If you go to libbydollar.com, everything's easy.
Maybe I'm just going to send you some anonymous, questions right now.
Yeah, get on there. I'll know it's you. But
how do you know it's me? It's anonymous.
British sarcasm.
True. I do. Oh, you spelled the word color wrong. I got it was you.
It's either Jane or Canadian. All right.
Fine. All right. Thanks, Libby, so much. I can't wait to.
Thank you, Jane.
And this has been packed full of tips. I'm sure you've helped somebody today. So
I hope so. That's the best feeling in the world, is helping people.
I agree.
This is such a wonderful job. It is really hard to get over the hurdles in your own head sometimes.
Yeah, or never. All right, on that note. Okay, bye.